Welcome to the CAD Office Training Guide series for FDOTConnect. I'm John Mark Palacios, CAD Applications Engineer. Today I'm going to be going through the FDOTConnect Roadway Design 3D Modeling Guide. In this course, we will learn the Bentley Open Roads Designer Connect Edition tools for design and 3D modeling within the FDOTConnect workspace. In this series of videos, I will take you step by step through each exercise from the guide. In this session, we're going over Chapter 5 of the guide, creating 3D deliverable files. So let's take a look at what steps we're going to go through. So we're going to be going through all the table. I'm going to show you in a second. In the CAD manual, there's a table that lists out all the 3D deliverable files that we need to create. So we're just going to create each one of those. There's going to be a step for each. So we're going to set up the alignments in LandXML. We're going to have 2D planimetrics file, a master model file, and this isn't one of the 3D deliverables, but the master model we need in order to create the other 3D deliverables to have everything in one file, particularly the surfaces. So the idea is that the intent is that you have one surface for proposed, existing, subgrade for the whole project. So those should be 3 surfaces altogether. Break lines files as well for both of the top subgrade. This one's new if you've done 3D deliverables before. We're now in the table now for the FDOTConnect CAD manuals, and the latest CAD manual revision that was revised, I think, in March of last year, somewhere around that ballpark. We updated it to require creation of an eye model as well. So I'm going to show you the process for creating those. And just to show you one of our tools, the LandXML visualizer. There's a lot of other tools that we can use to check LandXML. And probably the recommended way is probably going to be to use something like Trimble, if you have access to that, and open up the LandXML files in there, and there's a lot more checking that you can do. But we do have a basic checking tool, so I'll show you that tool as well. All right, so I just switched over to the, this is the FDOT-CAD manual here. The latest version is published date. You can see it's actually August 21st, 2020. And if you go down to Chapter 8 on Production 3D Deliverables, underneath CAD Delivery, under the CAD.zip file, there's a section on the 3D Deliverables project folder. Here's this table right here. So it says 8.4.6.1 in this version of the CAD manual. So right in this section here, 3D Deliverables. This is a table that you want to reference when you're creating 3D deliverables. This is copied into the training guide for your reference too, but certainly it's not the authoritative version. That may be outdated as the CAD manual gets updated more often. So that was just kind of an example for your reference. Definitely want to look at the table from the actual CAD manual. And so you can see all of these that we're going to create. So we're going to create the LandXML files here. We're going to do the 2D planimetrics design, and we're just going to be doing the roadway for this. You can also do drainage and pond design, the 2D. We have the this one. This is the LandXML file for the existing surface, so we'll be creating that. I don't think we're gonna show this step because this is basically you just take the server.rd file and do a save as with a new file name, because there's nothing really to export there, so nothing to it. This 3D proposed surfaces, these are 2 LandXML files, so you got the proposed top, proposed bottom or subgrade surface. So we'll show you how to do those, convert those to create those surfaces, and then convert them to LandXML. And the break lines, actually this happens as an interim step in creating these surfaces. We usually create the break line files from the proposed models. So then we save this file, and then we create the surfaces in this file that has the break lines, and do the LandXMLs from that file. The 3D proposed models, so this isn't in the order that we're going to be creating them in. There's a different order, and there's a reason for that. So the 3D proposed model is going to actually be coming from the master model file because it's all the entire model, all the models in one federated model essentially. So in ORD, it should be an I model, and there's a couple different extensions here. This may actually be i.dgn for an I model. I think some of the versions of the I model use a .i model extension, but I think in the current version it uses i.dgn. So the intent here is that you're submitting an I model file for the entire model, and it should be named in this naming convention. And you can also do one for drainage separately, although technically if you have it referenced into the model, it should also pick that up and include it. So it's kind of an optional thing where you can do it separately as well. All right, so we're going to start with exercise 5.1, page 5-2. So the first thing we're going to do is the land XML files for the alignment. So we're going to open the ALG and RD01 file. So I'm just going to browse. I have ORD open right here. I'm just going to go browse to it. Make sure this is in my correct folder. 22049555201_CE. Go to my Roadway folder and select ALG and RD01. Open that. So there's two alignments, and we need to export them both. And remember, for the ALG and RD01, we have both horizontal and vertical geometry in this file. So this is the reason we're going in here, just export it directly from here. You could probably export it from another one, but it's better to do it from the original source rather than trying to export it a reference that may not behave correctly. So we should have the ALG and RD referenced into all these other files. All right, so to open up my super elevation view, so I'll just go in here into multi-model views and switch to the default view. And if you want, you can do the F2 shortcut. So it's going to be default 3D views. And make sure I have my profiles there, have my 3D information. All right, so let's start with the State Road 61 alignment here. And because I have the model referenced in on top of it, it's a little bit cluttered. So I'm just going to turn off the references in the 2D view. So I'm just going to go to attach and turn off these model files. Pretty much turn off everything that's not the alignment because I don't need it right now. All right, so we need to export this to land XML. So we're going to go over here to the geometry tab on the ribbon. And we go to import export right under the geometry tab. Click the little drop down on that because the first one's going to be an import. We need to export. So go to the last option. This is export geometry. And make sure this export type is land XML. And the version should be 1.2. And only active profiles, that's good, because if you have more than one, like the existing round, we don't need to export that. That would just be more confusion, so make sure that box is checked. So I'm going to accept that, and then ask me to locate the elements. So I'm going to select this center line of State Road 61, and reset, and then accept the land XML version and the only active profiles, yes. And it asks me to save this as the XML. So I need to save this in the 3D deliverables folder. So I'm just going to go up a level here, use a little up arrow. Since it's in my Roadway folder by default. So I need to go to 3D deliverables. And this file, reference the table, but it should be a standard format name. All these are starting with AMG dash. So it's going to be ALGN SR61, AMG ALGN SR61.xml. Make sure to save as type Sangland XML down here. And click Save. Now, if you want to check it, we can always go to that directory. If I go to the FDOT Explore Directories, right here in the Resources, Current Work Set. So it's going to go into the Roadway folder. So I need to go up a level, 3D deliverables. And you can see there it was created. Now, if you open this, usually it would open in like a text editor by default. I have Notepad++, so you can open it, and if you want to open it, it can get a little bit confusing. So it's there. You can kind of get a sense from that. You can see this. Okay, there's an alignment there. So it should look something like this. If it looks weird, it doesn't have land XML right up here in the schema, then something went wrong. So this is just basic check, and then you can see the profile is here. So there's a profile section. You got some PVIs and curves and that sort of thing. So it's good. It exported. It's not very complicated. You got some. Basically, for each segment, you got lines here, curves here. This particular one is fairly short, fairly straightforward. So let's go ahead and do the same process for the other center line. So this baseline, 98. Let's just go back here to geometry, import, export. And this time, since the last tool I used was export, I can just click the button. It's gonna go straight back to the same tool. Export geometry. Type is land XML, and then select the baseline of US 98, which is the orange line down here. Reset to complete. Accept those two options. And then we're going to call this one. So it's taking me back to the 3D deliverables folder. Make sure you're in the right place. And this one's going to be called AMG ALGN BL 98.xml. And then click Save. And if you look in Explorer, you can see it's been saved, so it's good to go. All right, so now we'll go into the next exercise, 5.2. So we're going to do the 2D proposed planimetrics file for AMG. So we need to actually open up the DSGN RDO1 file for this one. I'll go to File, Open, Browse. I'll make sure I'm in the Roadway folder. Select the DSGN RDO1 and click Open. So for this one, we just basically need to simplify. There's a couple steps we got to take just to simplify it. And then we're going to export it. Essentially export it. We're going to create a fence and just to simplify it, because we have a lot of things with civil geometry, but when we're creating these AMG files, basically all we want is microstation geometry. We want simplified CAD geometry, so it's a more universal format that they can work with. So we're just going to be stripping all the intelligence essentially. All right, so I got my plan view open. And in the view attributes, we just want to make sure constructions are turned off. So uncheck that. You can use the F7 if you want, but this way I can see the status, say, hey, it's off. We need to turn off any reference files, and they may already be turned off. But let me just go check. So I'm going to open the level display manager, because I got to turn off some levels too. So I went over to the Home tab on the primary level display. Okay, so my ServRD is on. I don't know, all the levels may be off because I'm not seeing anything on there. But I'll just turn that off. I'll right click on that, uncheck display. And there are some levels that need to get turned on and off here. So the default level, I don't know if there's anything on it. I'll turn that on because I'm not seeing anything coming on. There really shouldn't be anything on default, but it says it's used, so I don't know what it's used for. So we need to turn off the baseline, centerline construction, and scratch. There's probably, yeah, baseline and centerline construction is not actually used, so I think we're right. I'll turn off the scratch. Can turn off the construction lines too. I mean, I have the constructions off, but this can just double check that. So, like I said, you shouldn't have anything on default, but if you're following our QC, I'm going to turn it off because there shouldn't be anything on it, and I'm not seeing anything coming on and off when I toggle it. And we just make sure that we basically just have the 2D elements that we need and nothing else, nothing extra. So that should be good to go. There's the only thing I'm wondering about. Pavement asphalt EP, this should be coming from the survey. I don't think we need that in our design, so I'm going to turn that off. Because we have the survey in a separate file. We're trying to create as clean a file as possible, so having redundant information like that, 2 different files, if anything, it's just more confusing for the contractor. So turned off the pavement asphalt underscore EP as well. So now I just have proposed lines in here. I got my pavement milling, I got all of my edge of pavements, traffic separators, all these lines here. And these are great. These are all pretty much civil geometry. They all have feature definitions, intervals, and all kinds of rules and intelligence. So you can see if you select one of them, it's ruled off the center line. And this is definitely the way we work in ORD. That's to be expected. But for what we're trying to do here, we don't want any of that. So what we're going to do is create a fence. So I'm going to come over here to the element selection, click the little drop down and place fence. First option here. And just fence everything in the file. And then we want to save. And if you need to check the fence type, you can always check that there. So then we want to save it as, save the fence contents to a file. So we go back to this option here, click the drop down, and do save fence to file next to the last option. And then we got to check the output file. So the output file is going to be in our 3D deliverables folder. So click that 3 dots there. And then we need to make sure, of course, we're in the right work set, but we need to go over to 3D deliverables. And this is going to be called AMG to DSGN RD01. And it'll add the .dgn, so I can leave that off. So AMG-2 DSGN RD01. And save as type DGN. Now, okay, and click save. So we're not done with the command here. So there is an option also if you want to save it as a DWG. You can just go ahead and switch to the generated file and then save that 2D as DWG. For this one, it's not as crucial. It's an option if you want to create DWG for any reason. It's kind of up to you. If the contractor requests it, you can go that route. I'm going to show you how to do the save as DWG for one of these other files, so I'm going to skip it for this one. That's kind of an optional step. The steps are in the exercise here on page 5-5. So I'm just going to leave that off, and we'll do the same process, I think, when we do the break lines. Because it does work better when we're trying to edit the 3D. It usually works better to do it in DWG mode. But for these lines, it's not as crucial. All right, so the mode should be copy, inside is fine. So I'm just going to accept these options. And down here, if you check your status in the message center, check the message and it says a file whatever your path is, your worksets folder, 3D deliverables, and this workset, AMG, 2D, SG, and RDO1.dgn was saved. So that's done. All right, so now we need to create a master model file to reference in all the other models. You know, one ring to rule them all, one ring to bind them. That's basically the same thing. Lord of the models. So we're gonna go to the F.tab of the ribbon. Go to the F.ribbon. We're going to choose create file. MODL RD. And this modifier, we're going to put master. And make sure the counting and coordinate system are correct. And just do create open file. Now, in the previous ones, when we created the model file, we kind of skipped out and we said, we'll just create the GDTM RD. We'll just attach that file. And we didn't attach the serve RD. In fact, we didn't even attach the existing features. Well, this one, we need everything attached. So we want to go ahead and attach everything correctly. So the first thing I'm going to do while I'm in the F.tab is I'm going to do an attach survey references tool. And this can take a minute, but this will attach the serve RD 4 times with different logical names. So it'll get that one attached correctly. And then we can attach all the others. So if under the F.tab right here in the roadway section, go to attach survey reference. And it basically is going to run through the steps automatically for you. So I think it's pulling the serve RD in the looks for it in the survey folder. You notice it didn't even ask for it. So you can see it's opening up serve RD. So it's basically automating a process where it attaches it 4 times and it creates the 4 different logical names for like topo, UTX, I think even GDTM. So it'll take a second to run through that. All right, so when that finally finishes, it took a couple minutes here. You should see all your server already attached, and you don't necessarily see the difference, but if you open up references, you'll see it attached 4 times. So if I go over to the Home tab, bring up Attach Tools, References, so there's my server RD. It's attached here 4 times. I got the topo, the GDTM, the UTEX, and the DREX. Now I'm gonna attach the GDTM separately. So I'm actually gonna go ahead and turn this off. Since we use the GDTM for all our models, just to be consistent to have a single source, even though that GDTM was exported from the server RD originally, just to be consistent, I'll use that one for everything for setting it active. So you may want to turn off the GDTM when you run that. So now with the references open, I'll come over here to attach reference and attach everything else that I need. So in the roadway folder, I'm going to need the alignment, the design. If you have your existing drainage features, utilities, all the existing features you need. So I'm going to attach all of those. I'm going to need, I probably have more files than you do just because I have different versions here as I'm going through the videos. I've created multiple versions. I'm going to need the mainline 61. So I've got the detail 61, the mainline 61, and then I need the US 98. And I think that's it from here. The right-of-way lines, actually we do need the right-of-way, well, for the model it's not as crucial, but you can attach the RWDT as well if you want. Click OK, or sorry, click Open. And everything should be the default model. So I'll just click OK on all of these. All right, and there's a couple, we need to attach the drainage as well. So let's go ahead and go back to attach reference. Go up here. Oh, and also we need the GDTM file. So let me come over here into survey first. Attach the GDTM RDO1. Open that. Default model, click OK. All right, so that I can set that existing ground. And then I'll go over here, back to attach reference. Now I'm going to go to the drainage folder and see what I need there. So you need your PD, PL, RDO1. This DR. Anything that's 3D model, basically you need that information. So I'm going to attach the PD, PL, RDO1. So there's my pond. There's also a 3D model of that. And I think that should be it. All right, now one thing that we do need to do is set this model as active. So I'm going to select this existing ground, this terrain model. We're not going to build anything in here, I don't think, but just in case we need it for anything, we'll just set as active terrain model on this. So select this terrain boundary, get the little pop-up for that. And I should make sure also that we have a 3D view created so that I can use the F2 key or the view control here and then do plan in 3D. Just to make sure we got 3D information. So it looks like we do. It's there. I'm going to go ahead and save settings. All right, so that's my master model. Since we have this created, the first thing I'm going to do is export the iModel. And so whatever I think is attached here is going to be exported as part of the iModel. So let's just make sure that you have everything attached that you need and anything that extra that is not attached. I'm just going to check in my 3D view quick. If I turn off the serve RD, turn off that display, just make sure my proposed model all looks right. And it does. I'm going to turn off constructions here. And you could create, so yeah, I got drainage in here as well. You can see my 3D drainage that's been created and just attached in. We got some pipes above the ground there. That's a good QC check. Said, oops, that might be an issue. Looks like it's time to send it back to the drainage folks and ask them to fix that. And let's see here. So I'm going to turn that back on. So if you have so I think this goes with whatever's displayed gets exported. So if you don't want just the existing model exported to your iModel, you can turn that off as well. But I think the intent here is to have everything exported, and then the reviewer, whoever's looking at the iModel, can just turn on and off whatever they need. So this is exercise 5.4. We just go over here to the File menu and do Publish iModel. And it brings up this little pop-up here. So check this box to create a single package. So everything is just going to be one. And then click the 3 dots to browse for location. Remember, we got to go in the 3D deliverables folder. Okay. So in my case, it just happens to already be there. Probably because I already went through this exercise. So just navigate to it and then click select folder once you're inside it. And then change the package name to the standard naming convention. So it's AMG MODL RD01. And it's going to add the .i.dgn over here. And if you want to check the screenshot on the training guide to make sure that everything looks good, but it all looks good here. All these settings should be all right. And then just click publish down here. It'll take a second. It'll give you a status update in the message bar. So just watch it until it shows, it'll tell you when it's completed. So you can see down here, it finally finished. Created file, the AMG modlrdo1.i.dgn. And that's pretty much it for the creation. Now, if you want to check it, you should be able to go and just open that file up. Now, it's an I model, so it's a different format. I noticed it created actually for each of these files that we exported in i.dgn. But in the 3D deliverables, it should have the master. So here's the AMG modlrdo1.i.dgn. I'm just going to open that. And that workflow, if you need to redo it after you've made changes to your other files, you should be able to. So it's all in there. It looks just the same as the file we just had open, but this is a more universal format. I don't like this. We got some glitches here. So that could just be an issue with the export process, not something we're going to try to resolve. So this is kind of a test here, trying to get this I model created to see if it can be used. We haven't developed like workflow for how you would clean this up. But if you remember when we had troubles with the civil cells, it actually showed these lines connected like this, even though it didn't. They weren't connected like that. But so this is probably a defect with doing the export process. So that just shows me, hey, maybe it's not going to be as useful as we'd like, but most of the other information looks like it's in there. So let's move on to the next exercise, 5.5. So let's go back to that master model file that we just had open, first of all. So modlrd master 01. Well, we already made sure that we attached the GDTM RD01, and so we turned that one off. So this is the one we want to export this to LandXML. So actually, if you hover over this surface and get the little pop-up menu, same where we went to set it as an active terrain model, this third button here, there's a drop-down. So click that drop-down, and right in the middle, we have LandXML. So I'm going to pick LandXML. And there's a few options that come up here. We got project name. So we're going to call it AMG 3 Surface EX01. This would be the standard naming convention for that. And for description, we're just going to say existing surface. We want to make sure the export option says export both. And I'm going to accept those options that I just set. Then it asks me to save it here. So it looks like it's actually putting the description as the Microsoft Project XML file. I hope that's still, it's saying LandXML here, so we can verify that and make sure it's a LandXML. I don't know why it says Microsoft Project XML here. But we need to go into the 3D deliverables folder. So let's navigate there. And this is going to be our standard naming convention. So it's AMG 3 Surface EX01.xml. And click Save. And I still have this folder open in File Explorer, so I'm going to check it. I don't like how it said that was a Surface or Microsoft Project instead of LandXML. So you can just double click, open in your favorite editor. If you have Notepad++, you can do this, edit with Notepad++. So that opened it up, and it does say LandXML at the top, so that's your main check. This is a much larger file because it has all the points, all the triangles. So over here it says surfaces. And because I have Notepad++, I can shrink this down. So all I have is surfaces in there. If I shrink that down, so that file is good to go. Let's go to the next exercise 5.6. We're going to create the 3D proposed top brake lines file. Again, we're going to still be working in the master model file. So we need to turn off everything that we don't need. So let's make the 3D view active first of all. And then open up your level display. We're going to turn off Serve RD. All we need is proposed features here. We're going to turn off the alignment. We don't need that one because we're doing just the brake lines of the model. So the intent here. We're going to turn off, oops. Trying to make this a little bit longer here. All right, so we're going to turn off, we shouldn't need the DSG and RD01. There shouldn't be anything 3D in there. I'll just turn it off to be on the safe side. All our existing features models. Looks like there's a bunch of levels off on this already. I was actually questioning whether that was attached. But this is a proposed model, so I'm going to turn those off. All of the existing features. Existing drainage, existing utilities. Okay, so that was that one pipe that looks like it's on top of the road is existing utilities. So thought maybe it was drainage, but it's like it's existing utilities. So that's just a utility conflict. Let's see. So I need the 3 model files. I don't need my right of way. There's nothing in 3D. There should be nothing in 3D, but I'm going to turn it off to be on the safe side. The GDTM RD01, turn that off. We don't want the existing surface in this one. The proposed pond, we can leave that on. That should be okay. For the purposes of this brake line, we're going to want one proposed surface, one proposed set of brake lines. It may cause some issues on the surface. Yeah, actually no, I'm gonna turn it off. This is a good example. So if you look at how this is set up, so here we tie down to the existing ground here. So these are not contiguous surfaces. So in that condition, when you have that kind of case on your project, which is not a continuous surface, that's the condition where you're going to need to create multiple proposed surface, proposed top. So you'd have to do a separate one for the pond, a separate existing surface, proposed surface. So you might just run through this in the pond file rather than in the model master file to create the DG or to create the brake lines directly from there. So I'm actually going to turn this off because I don't want to use that one because it's not contiguous. This is all contiguous, so this can be one proposed surface through here for both my alignments. Now, if you need to split it, you can, and then you'd probably have to do it in mainline and 61. But for the surfaces, our recommendation is to just have one surface. For quantities, you're still going to be splitting it, but for these surfaces, it's not, these don't get used for quantities, the LAN XML, unless maybe the contractor is checking quantities with them. So it should be all right. I'm going to go ahead and turn off in the 3D view, turn off constructions, clean that up a little bit. There you go. And just double check that you have only proposed features. So now we know you start turning off some more levels because we're just doing brake lines. So we don't need any of these meshes. Okay. So we need, since there's nothing in this file, so we're not worried about that one. We just need these 3 files. I'm going to hold down Shift to select all 3 of them. so that I'm turning levels off for all three of them at once. And let me make this a little bit longer so I can see my levels easier. So everything that's PX needs to get turned off. That's our meshes. And so we're on step 6, exercise 5.6, and kind of outlines everything that needs to get turned off. And let me see if there's any filters that'll help me out here. Yeah, I don't think we have one specifically for meshes. So if I just sort by use, I can see it here and just look for anything that's underscore PX and just turn those off. So you can see the meshes going away here. Now, if you're doing this directly in the file, like if you're doing it for the model file, you can turn these off in Open Road standards, and it's a little bit easier. And you can just come over here to feature definitions and uncheck mesh, and you turn off all the meshes. And also you can do the linear feature definitions that you don't need. You can turn them off. But because we have these referenced in, we have to do it in the level display. So for the most part, the level names are pretty close or exactly matching the feature definition. So we've turned off all the underscore PX. Oops, I turned off a sidewalk PM. I don't think I need to turn that off. I think I want that on. All right, and then we need to turn off anything that's on the bottom. So we have all these break lines. So here's a good way to see it. So we just creating the top surface. So we don't need these here. This is bottom PM. We don't need this. I don't know what this is on level default. That's a QC issue, but it's okay. What we're going to do for the purposes here, we're probably just going to turn off the default level. Yeah, I don't know why this stuff is showing on level default. Not the right feature definition. So turn off the default level. We're going to turn off the bottom PM level. You can watch what it's doing here. So this one, there's actually this one actually has extra points on the bottom, but I think on the friction course, because it's just one, it's one all the way across. So you can see here, there's no top line there, so it's not to worry because there's no break there. So we don't need a break line if there's no break. And turn off the subgrade PM. Down here to subgrade, that turns off a lot of them. We've still got this pavement base. That needs to get turned off. So anything that's not on the top needs to get turned off. So if you go through it, you can check. So I'm going to turn off. I have constructions turned off, so they're not going to get exported to the break lines, but I'm going to go ahead and turn off construction lines PM. Anything like that, contours, major, minor, that definitely doesn't need to be on. DTM, those don't need to be on because I'm just doing brake lines, so no DTMs, no flow arrows. So curb, that's a top point. Curb base, that's not a top point, so turn that off. Flow line, that's a top point. Cut, that's a top. That's the point where it ties into the existing ground, but that's still an important one. Cut and fill PM. Median crown, pavement asphalt, those are good. Pavement brake, pavement milling, overbuild. Shoulder base needs to get turned off. Anything that's based should be turned off. But pavement, those are top points. I got pavement brake, unpaid brake, sidewalk, and traffic separator. So that should be good to go. If you look at it, now I no longer have a bunch of lines stacked on top of each other. The only thing is right here, this traffic separator, there might be some lines stacked. Pavement slope brake. So that's probably in the civil cell, and so you'd have to clean up the civil cell to clean that up. But we'll go ahead and export it and See how it goes with this. But sometimes you can rotate it, to make sure that things aren't stacked. So if you change it to top view and things go away, then they might be stacked. If I zoom in here, this is right next to it, so it's probably okay. This is just the traffic separator and then the pavement asphalt, which is right next to it. If I go back to an isometric view, or if I rotate view, I can kind of see how that moves around. It's a lot harder to see when you're just looking at lines, what things are doing. So yeah, that's the top of the pavement, I think next to the traffic separator there. And we've got one here on the other side as well. So not an issue as long as you're not creating any vertical surfaces. And I think that was set purposely not to create any vertical surfaces. So that's just something you keep in mind for any of these. We're creating a DTM, so we have to have all its triangles and everything. So if you create any vertical surfaces, you're going to cause an issue. So your templates have to be built, so anything that's going to be in the proposed top or the proposed bottom surface is not creating a vertical line. So if you just offset it by 0.01 in the templates, that should be sufficient. So this one's ready. I think I have all my lines. So I'm going to do, we're simplifying it down, but we're simplifying it down in the 3D view. So it's just got to be just straight 3D lines. So I'm going to place a fence on here. So come back here to drop down on element selection, place fence. So you want to zoom it, make sure your 3D view is zoomed out enough to do this. Just place a fence around everything. And then I need to save fence contents to file. So I'm going to click the drop down. I do save fence to file. I want to change my output file. So click the three dots. Make sure you're in your 3D deliverables folder. And this file name is going to be AMG 3DS GNRD01. And it'll add the DGN for you. And this time I'm gonna select this box to switch to generated file because I do want to create a DWG from that file. So processing mode, copy, overlap. Yeah, this should be fine. So now I'm going to accept over here just to go through those options. Accept all those options. And because I checked the switch to generated file, it's opening up the DWG file. Or sorry, it's not a DWG yet. It's opening up the DGN file that we just created. Okay, and this is a straight 3D file. Notice up here it says 3D. And instead of having a 2D and 3D view, I just have a 3D view. I just happen to have two 3D views. Look at your model here. So yeah, I got 3D only. So that's what it should look like, is a 3D only file. And we're just going to save it as a DWG. So I just go over to File, Save As, and where it says Save As Type, change it to DWG. Keep the same file name, AMG 3DSGNRD01, but it's just a different extension. I'm going to click Save. Now, because it's switching to DWG mode, this thing pops up. It doesn't know what units it is. Change the units to survey feet. And if you want to do not display again, you can. I'm going to leave that one. And then so survey feet, click OK. And it's going to be in DWG mode. So over here it says R2018 DWG. And over here, this little icon right here in the bottom right, it says DWG work mode. This little blue button comes up. So this would be the place where you could make edits. If you have extra elements, like this line right here, I'll go ahead and just delete that. This is a bottom line. I know I don't need it, so I'm going to select it and delete it. It's going to be more challenging to do the other one. I have a random point right there. I don't need that. I'll come in here in this traffic separator on this end, do the same thing, just delete this bottom line. Actually, let me check that. So in the top view, yeah, so it's a vertical line. So you know it's going to be an issue. Because when I switch to top view, it totally disappears. So I delete that line, these extra points here. So that cleans that up. If you see any other lines that we weren't able to turn the levels off for some reason, any extra lines in your file, that's the time where you can just go ahead and delete them in here. And the only caveat being, if you do make changes in the DWG mode, you want to save it back over to the other one. I'm actually worried this line could cause an issue. Got this pavement break here, but because we didn't wrap around the traffic separator, I'm not sure what that's going to do. I'm going to leave it. That's just an argument. Yeah, we should have wrapped around the traffic separator. I could probably break the line from here to here if I needed to edit it. So first thing, just do a save. I don't know if MicroStation saves a DWG file automatically, so I would save to make sure. And then you also want to do a save as after you save it, because we want to overwrite that DWG file. So go File, Save As. Sorry, you want to overwrite the DGN file. So now I go back to MicroStation V8 DGN files and keep in the same file name, AMG3DSGNRDO1.dgn. Just click Save. It says already exists. You want to replace it? Yes. So now those two files match. That's the main thing, is keep matching. All right, so we can go on to the next exercise. So we already have the AMG3 DSGNRDO1 open. So in exercise 5.7, we want to do is select everything. So I'm going to close. We don't need two views open here. We just have one 3D model. And let me save settings like that. All right, so we're going to go over here. We want to select everything first of all. So I'm just going to do a block selection, drag a block around it. So all these lines are selected. Okay. You can probably just do select all as well. Doesn't matter, whatever tool you want to use. And then I go over here to Terrain tab. This is step 3 of exercise 5.7. And I do From Elements right here in the Create section. And it should say data point, add 120 selected elements. Okay, so that's good to go. Change this feature definition. It's doing proposed slopes. We definitely don't want that. The feature definition should be DTM proposed. The feature type should be break line. Now some of these are going to be boundaries, but most of them are going to be break lines. So let's start with the break line. Let's leave the edge method on none for now, see how it does. And to make sure those settings are right, and then it still says data point to add 120 selected elements. So I'll go ahead and accept that. Accept break line, edge method none, and then it processes. So created this large surface. There's a lot of extra triangles, a triangulated between everything. And that's because everything was a break line. It didn't select anything as a boundary. So it's not that surprising, honestly. So what we need to do is create a selection set of the cut underscore PM, the fill underscore PM. First of all, let me turn off the DTM PX to make it easier to select things. Turn that back on. Yeah, that's not going to help because I need it back on in a second. But I'll keep this over here in case I need to toggle things on and off to select it. I'm just going to do a right click, select all and level by element, and then select this cut underscore PM. So it selects all the cut PM. See if it'll let me add this. If not, I'll do it one by one. I'll switch my element selection to add and run that command, select all on level element. And I'm going to do the fill PM. This is where the DTMPX turning it off helps. I can find that little blue line easier. Select that fill PM. Yeah, it replaces the selection. That command doesn't respect the element selection. Just fine. I'll just do this. I'll just do this twice, once for each one. So then I want to go to the terrain section, and I want to go to feature management right here and change feature type, this third option, and change this feature type to boundary. It says data point to change 17 selected elements. So we don't need to worry about a particular terrain model. It's just going to change the type for all terrain models, basically. And then it's asking me for the all. I'm gonna exit out of that command, and I'm gonna do select all and level by element. This time I'm gonna do the cut. So I did the fill already, and I'm gonna do same command under feature management. So I'm just gonna click that button, go back to the last use command, data point to change 22 selected elements. There we go. So the first one, you may not see much of a difference. You have to apply them both. So that cuts out most of the triangles by making those cut and fill PMs a boundary. Because those are, for the most part, that's the feature definition that we have along the edges. The only case would be, I guess, if you're not tying it with a slope, if you're tying like the back of sidewalk to it, you might not have that point. In which case you might want to look at what feature definition you're using at that point on the back of sidewalk. It probably also isn't going to hurt anything if you just add a cut or fill PM at those points. That's probably another option. That's just something in how when you set up your templates, how you want to do it. We got some extra triangles right here. But this is really because we didn't complete this portion of the model. We just kind of stopped it right there. So really, there should be a tie-ins in this area. But yeah, it's worth checking, see how things look here. So it looks pretty good. Now I can show you, and I'll go ahead and just show you on these extra triangles here. If you still have extra triangles, you can delete some manually. However, we'll break any rules. So this is actually rule to this, but it's probably not a huge issue because the break lines, we made these dumb break lines. They're not civil geometry. They don't have any rules anymore. So you're probably not going to be making changes to that without just recreating the break lines file. So it's probably not a huge issue for in this particular case. So if I hover over if I click on the terrain boundary here, we'll get this little pop-up and click on the ruler. I would just come down here and remove rule, which this allows me to make edits now that I've removed that rule. Now if you hover over it, see there's no ruler icon. Rules are gone. So it doesn't have, it still has the break lines, but it doesn't have any rules tying it to these break lines. Now I can come in under the terrain tab. I can choose the edit model button, and it brings up this toolbar, edit terrain model. So I can delete triangles. I can just delete vertices. I can say, okay, I want to delete an edge triangle. I can do one triangle at a time. There's a bunch here, so I can even draw a line. So if I do delete triangle by line, and then I click it, you see how it's highlighting these triangles? So if I just draw a line through all those triangles that are extraneous, and now they're deleted. And then I can get off that command. You can also use any of the other tools in that toolbar as necessary. If you want to just delete like one triangle, for example, you could do that. I don't see too much else that needs cleaned up, so I'm gonna leave it. I'm gonna leave it for now. We want to save this as a land XML as the next step. This is our proposed top surface. So I'm going to grab this, if I can grab the boundary. Well, I'll select the triangles as the boundary showing up. And if you select it here on one of the edges, there's no overlapping lines. It might be easier. And then I do export terrain model. I think you have the option here in the toolbar as well. I can go over here and export to file. So if you have trouble getting that pop-up, I can do it from here, export to file, select my terrain model there. And this is going to be the same one we did before, pretty much. So it's land XML should be the format. If you chose the other menu, you probably already chose land XML. The project name, this is going to be PR01. And I'm going to copy this to the project description because that is apparently what it's putting in for the file name. Oops, PR. And then accept those options. Export both. Oh, okay, no. So yeah, the description is not what it's putting in. I'll cancel that. It's putting in the terrain name as the file by default. So I'll go ahead and put in the description. I'll put what it says in the manual here. So proposed surface. And I'm going to go ahead and copy this so I can paste it in the file name. So I'll just name this, I'm pasting it in, but name it AMG 3 Service PR01. And it should say XML for the save as type. Make sure you're in the 3D deliverables folder and then click save. All right, so that's our proposed top. Now we need to do the break lines for the subgrade. And so this is where it's saying it's important to not have any vertical faces. Also, it's important to not have any caves or anything doubled back. So when you're trying to do the vertical, trying to avoid the vertical faces, you need to make sure that it's sloping out and it doesn't like create anything concave or it doubles back in, because then it doesn't know how to put triangles on there. So there's some explanation there, and I could show you briefly. If you look at the way the templates are laid out, switch back to the master model file. So I'm going to just open modl rd master 01.dgn, one I was just working in. So we'll use this file again to set up a level display to. And if you didn't save your settings last time, that's actually a good thing. Better not to, because we're gonna have a different set of elements on. All right, so if I go create template, so if I look at this, let's do this inside traffic separator one, okay? And if I change this to active template here, and my there's two things that could be useful. So there's alternate surface. Some of these are set to subgrade. So if I highlight alternate surface, I turn off the point names here, I can see a blue box. So these points should be creating an alternate surface of subgrade. But this isn't the one used for the break lines. So this would be useful if you're doing like a top mesh. But if you zoom in close here, these are already set to have that 0.01 offset. So you can see this is not vertical. Even though construction, it should be vertical. Because of creating the DTM, we already set this to have a 0.01 offset. This one, of course, is not vertical, so you're right there. Same thing over here, that you have the 0.01 offset. So you should be okay. Let's look at the... Also, this, okay, so the point feature definitions, if you expand out that section here, and you look at subgrade underscore PM, just highlight that. This one's actually going to be used by the break lines. So it's probably the same points. Looks like it is. But this is a good way to check, because these are the main ones the main features that you're going to use to create those. So if I also check my end conditions, I can do the same thing there. Point feature definitions, subgrade PM. So this one's tricky, okay? First of all, this point here, if this is this going to be merged with the other one? Is it going to be right next to it? That's something to be aware of. You know how it relates to the pavement that it's right next to. If it's right on top of it, it's probably not an issue. But just check that, and if your base depth is different and it's vertical, then you might just want to make sure this has a horizontal offset. But this is a good example of where you'd create a cave, okay? So if I did subgrade all the way out to here, and then subgrade all these points, no, that's not going to work. It's not going to know how to triangulate here. So what we're doing here is we're coming to this point right here. If I edit it, you can kind of see it. Here's my 0.01 offset from the curb bottom out. So it's 0.01 in. And you have to make sure it's in the right direction. It needs to be 0.01 to the right here because so it'll slope out this way. It'll make a nice gradual slope. And then this one should also be 0.01. See, it's 0.01 from the curb back out, so it's also 0.01 in. So that's good. You can see this little gap right there. Not very noticeable, but that's enough to make the difference to be able to create that versus not to be able to create it. So let me select my subgrade again. We're not using this footer, so I'm not going to worry about that one. If you did use it, you'd want to set these to subgrade as well. So I think they're set as a bottom PM right now. They should probably be set as subgrade, but we don't actually have any handrail on this. And also this one, you got to make sure it's not vertical. So this one here, we already have a little offset here. And this is actually set a little bit larger, 0.05. You could shrink that down to 0.01. It's not a problem. We're just coming from this point, going up. And then the subgrade, so this was all, these slopes are proposed top, but these also need to be on the proposed subgrade. So the idea with the subgrade surface is we can use it to run our earthwork. So we can, in fact, we'll do it in the next chapter when we do earthwork. We'll also do a surface-to-surface comparison with these surfaces that we created. So you can say, okay, find the difference between the existing ground, which this ties to, and the proposed subgrade, which is, following the bottom of the pavement and all the other surfaces being created. But we need it to tie in, otherwise there'll be a gap, and you won't be able to do that. So this part, the cut and fill, these aren't subgrade, but you're gonna need them as well. So just make sure that there's nothing vertical there either. I mean, that's the same thing. You're gonna have an issue with the proposed surface. So as long as this line here, only need it for subgrade. So this one has a subgrade feature definition. So that gives you a sense, I guess, of how it needs to be set up. It's something that ideally you think about as you're designing the templates, so that you don't have to go back and redo a lot of stuff. Because if I change that, of course, now I gotta synchronize my template and get it to rebuild. So it's just something to be aware of. Let's see here. So let's go ahead and turn off the levels that we need. So I got my 3D view open. Let's make my 3D view active. We're doing this from the 3D view again. I still have these 3 files displaying. That's all I need. This is proposed again, so make sure these others are off. That's good to go. So select these 3. Hold down Shift and select all of them. And we're going to turn off... Let's turn off the default level. We're going to turn off all the PX levels again. I'm going to turn off anything that's on top. So you have to think through your feature definitions, figure out what's on top, what's on the bottom. So traffic separator, that's a top line. Subgrade, that's a bottom one. We need that on. Sidewalk's a top. The shoulder unpaved, that's going to be both top and bottom because it's a slope. The shoulder paved break, that's a top line. Shoulder base, that's a middle line. So it's neither on top or on the bottom. Not on either surface. The pavement overbuild, also top line. Milling is top line. Pavement break, we don't need those. Pavement asphalt is top line. Median crown, that's probably this line right here. Yeah, so that's both top and bottom as well. It's on a slope. Low arrow we don't need. Cut and fill, we're gonna need those. Turn off the DTMs. Curb flow line, curb base, curb PM. All of these go off. Bottom PM, turn bottom PM off because we're using subgrade, and bottom PM is basically all the middle points. So if you have this set, you should see a lot of lines, a lot of purple lines. Good to make sure that there's no horizontal difference. So if I change to top view, I can check, make sure there's nothing stacked on top of each other. So these look like they're on top of each other, but look, there's actually it's probably that 0.01 break. So that's all right. And if I just do a rotate view, I can see as I rotate to make sure nothing else is appearing to surprise me. So this one actually has something stacked here. So there's this line and there's a line below that. So that's going to be an issue. That line over there. I think it's just the 0.01 was not put in the template. That's what it looks like to me. Yeah, that's why we check these sort of things. So really that should get fixed in the template. So, because that's my traffic separator template. I could check that. Again, close to each other is fine. On top of each other is not fine. So these are fine because they're close to each other. And it's hard to see if it's on top unless you do rotate. Say, look, oh, there's 3 lines stacked there. Is that a problem? No, it's not. When you zoom in, see they're right next to each other. So not a problem. That's just my back of curb sidewalk lines where things are changing elevation. But yeah, this traffic separator one looks to me like it's going to be an issue. So if we kind of turn it here, you can kind of see, okay, so this is the bottom of the pavement, and this is going into the traffic separator. There's something going on there. If you hover over it, you should be able to see what point it is. So it's RT pavement base bottom out and RTS RT bottom out. So if you go in your template editor, that's the place to fix it. I can go components, quarter templates, and look at my inside TS. Change the to active template and bring up point feature definitions. Look at subgrade PM. So I got this base bottom in here, and then directly above it, I think it's one of these points. Actually, might be this one here. That just doesn't have that vertical offset. It says RT pavement base bottom out. Yeah, see that horizontal from the RT pavement bottom in? That's where I need that 0.01. If you apply that, close it, it's gonna clean it up. Now you may, by the time you see this, I might update the data set to correct this, but this way you have a sense of what you need to do if you have an issue. So you'd have to go in and synchronize that template. I'm gonna save the changes to the ITL here, and you have to go synchronize the template. I'm gonna leave it right now and just build it like it is. Remember, we're going to edit the brake line, so you can also make edits there. All right, so I got my 3D view set up like I want it. I got construction is turned off. Let me just switch it back to the top view. Zoom out so I can see everything. All right, so I'm going to place a fence. So I go over here to selection, place fence. Place a fence around everything in the 3D view. Go back over here to the fence and do save fence to file. Click the 3 dots. We're going to call this one, I'm going to just select the AM3D SGNRD01 and then modify the name here. So it's going to be EW01 for earthwork. And of course, make sure it's in the 3D deliverables folder. Click save there and make sure this is okay. I'm going to switch to generated file so I can save it as DWG and make those edits. So go ahead and accept, and it'll generate that file, and it should switch to it if you check that box. All right, so there we are. Let me find this extra line and see if I can do anything with it. All right, so we're gonna create, and we have this DGN. We're gonna just create a DWG to do the editing here, and so I do file, save as, change the save as type to DWG, keep the same name, click save. Make sure the units here are survey feet, click OK. And we do need to edit this one line here. So I can show you a couple tricks for editing that. So, you can see, okay, we're in DWG work mode here. All right, so if I just come over here to the drawing ribbon, drawing tab of the ribbon, and just do move. And so I made this a top view, so I really just need to move it in the XY plane over a little bit. So I'm going to hope it's selecting the one on top. And, so I really just need to move it over this way without changing it this direction. So if you use RQ command, you can rotate to line up with the element, to rotate AccuDraw. Oh, I got the wrong line. I was like, wait. This is the line I need. Sorry. Go back to my top view. All right, so finally rotated it. And then just move this over a little bit. in this plane. So just a tiny bit, so it looks like all the others. Better to do this in the template library. It's just this way you can see how it's done. So if I rotate view, I can verify that it's still up in the air above the other one. So it looks like it's in the right place. But now it's moved to the inside, so that resolves the cave issue. So then I got my DWG. I'm just gonna do save on the DWG, and then save as. Overwrite the DGN. File save as. Change the type to DGN. Overwrite the one I created earlier. The DWG work mode, we found it works better for editing the 3D lines. That was something that we saw with the old versions, Power GPEG, SS4, SS10. You may find that it's not necessary, that you can just edit directly into DGN. We just haven't tested it extensively yet. So that's something that if you want to play with, you're welcome to, instead of creating the DWG. But if you have issues with trying to edit the lines, maybe the DWG may solve the problem going to DWG work mode. All right, so we're in the DGN file, and now we can create. I'm going to switch down to just the one view. So we need to create a selection set of all the elements so we can create the surface here. So I'm selecting everything. I go to the terrain tab, create from elements. Feature type should be break line. It's very similar to what we did before. So feature type is break line. This is none. Feature definition is a DTM proposed. I don't think we have one for just the top and bottom, so it's just a DTM proposed. We can give it a name right here as you're creating it. AMG, I think I still forgot to do it on the last one, so AMG. Should be AMG 3 surface EW01 on the name, and then data point, and accept those options. And lots of triangles again. So we're going to have to do that same thing where we created a selection set and modified the features. So I'm going to right click, select all on level by element, and select the cut PM. Come over to feature management, change feature type. Just going to go straight into command because that's the last one I used. Changing it to boundary. So I'm going to data point to change 22 selected elements. Okay, and then I need to do the fill. Same thing. Select all on level by element. Click a fill PM line. Click change feature type. Feature type should be boundary. Data point. Accept those options. And that cleaned up for the most part. The same thing, we got extra triangles there. I showed you how to edit that. I'm not going to do it again. We got some more extra triangles here. Again, this is because it was closed up, and you may have extra triangles in different places on this one versus the other one. So what you can do also is create boundary lines. So I mean, these driveways we kind of left unfinished. So there's no lines going across here, but you should have some sort of tie-in there. So if you use a cut underscore PM, a fill underscore PM, all your tie-ins, usually you'd have some kind of template tying in here. Even if it's a pavement surface, you usually wouldn't think you would use that line, but I would recommend using it for that outside point if you're tying it in like a driveway or something, because that'll make it easier when you're creating the break lines to pick up that feature definition. And that's only affecting the point; it doesn't affect the components. So it's a good trick to remember. That way, when you do these cut PM, fill PMs, creating these deliverables, you'll be able to create a cleaner surface. So I'm just going to export this like it is. So I'm going to do, we save this to land XML, so I'm going to grab the surface. Go to export terrain model, land XML. And this should be on the project name. It should be AMG 3 Surface EW01. So, and we're going to call this proposed, you can say subgrade or bottom surface for the description. So I'm going to accept those options. Because I named the service correctly, it should automatically fill in the right file name. So AMG 3 Service EW01.xml. Click Save. Going to export that. So that wraps up 5.10. So we're going to go on to exercise 5.11. That's created. We've created all our 3D deliverables pretty much. If I look at my 3D deliverables folder, I think I should have everything. Again, I think we just skipped the survey one, which is just to save as and rename it. You don't have to simplify it like you did with the 2D line work. Let's see. So there's all our deliverable files. So these XMLs, what can you do with these? Well, you can open them in something like Trimble, which is a good idea. Another thing you can do is you can use our land XML visualizer. So if you go to your desktop, here on your desktop, if you go all the way to the right corner of your monitor, on the right corner of the taskbar, a little kind of vertical button right here. Click that. It minimizes everything and brings up the desktop. And you want to look for the FDOTConnect folder, which is right here. Open that up. And let's make it some large icons so you can see it. All right, so we're going to look for the land XML visualizer, which is this icon right here. Just going to double click, open that. And I'm going to do, well, let's make it full screen here. I'm going to do File, Open. And I'm going to do, just pick one of those files I said. So I'm going to go to my worksets folder. This workset, 3D deliverable. So I'll just do the one I just created, the service EW01, and open that up. So this is my surface straight off the land XML. There's a few options that you can set here in your plan view. You can kind of see a couple things here if you open them up. There's all my break lines, all my faces, my points, that sort of thing. If I right click on points, I can actually hide the points. So that cleans it up a little bit. Also, I can come over here, and if I don't want to see like the vectors, I can uncheck these options. So I get rid of all those lines. Now it's a nice color, and there's a kind of a color shading to show the slope. So that kind of gives you a sense that might be useful to you. Or you could turn the triangles off and just look at the wireframe. And if you don't want that contour shading, you can always, just change it to default or grayscale. And you got a few options here. You can zoom to extents. You can zoom in, zoom out right here. There should be a tool to rotate it, but I don't know. It's kind of limited how much you can do with this. Okay, so it's not the best tool for reviewing, but it is. At least you can verify that it was created and looks right, and a couple and a little bit of analysis there. So that wraps up Chapter 5. Thank you for joining me today for the CAD Office series for FDOTConnect. This was the first part of Chapter 5, Creating 3D Deliverables for the FDOTConnect Roadway Design 3D Modeling Guide.